There are people who do not fear loneliness. They fear being misunderstood. To them, silence is not emptiness, it's refuge. A place where they can finally breathe without performing, where their words are not weighed, their emotions not dissected. They move through the world quietly, observing more than they reveal, not because they have nothing to say, but because the noise of others often feels too sharp against the softness of their inner world. Their silence is not absence. It's self-protection, a way of holding on to peace in a world that constantly demands noise. This is the psychology of people who feel safer in their own silence, and the invisible story of what shaped them to live this way. There is a certain kind of quiet that doesn't come from shyness. It comes from knowing that words can wound, and that sometimes even honesty is misunderstood. People who live in silence are not empty. They are full and of thoughts, of feelings, of unsaid things. Their minds are often loud even when their mouths are not. They feel everything yet speak so little. It isn't because they lack expression, but because expression has never felt entirely safe. They are the quiet ones, the listeners, the observers who notice the tremor in a voice before anyone else does. They study the pauses between words, the flicker of emotion behind someone's eyes. Their silence isn't absence. It's a form of awareness most people never reach. In a world that rewards loudness, the quiet ones often become invisible. They are mistaken for timid, distant, or uninterested. But beneath that stillness lies a deep sensitivity, one that absorbs everything. They take in emotions like air, processing them in silence because that's where they can make sense of it all. Silence for them is not a void. It's a sanctuary, a place to retreat when the noise of the world grows too heavy, too sharp. When people talk around them about success, drama, and urgency, the quiet ones are elsewhere. Inside their minds, they are decoding every tone, every subtle shift. They are trying to understand, not react. Their quietness is not an act of withdrawal, but a decision to stay connected to their inner peace rather than the chaos outside. There is a certain nobility in that, in refusing to add to the noise. But it also comes with a hidden cost, because silence, when misunderstood, isolates. People begin to assume that the quiet person has nothing to say, or that they do not care. But often the opposite is true. They care too much. They feel too deeply. They just don't know how to share that feeling without being overwhelmed by it. Inside, their thoughts are layered, poetic, and precise. But when they try to speak, the words feel heavy, clumsy, not enough. The language between what they feel and what others can hear doesn't quite translate, and so they retreat again, not out of apathy, but out of quiet surrender. They become masters of internal dialogue, having full conversations in their heads that the world will never hear. And while others fill silence with chatter, they find comfort in its stillness, because silence to them is not loneliness, it's clarity. Yet the world rarely knows how to receive people like this. Teachers call them reserved. Friends call them distant. Lovers call them hard to read. Few see that silence is not the absence of emotion, but the overflow of it, so much that it spills inward rather than outward. In social spaces, they blend in. They smile softly, nod often, but their presence is gentle, like background music that few stop to listen to. And yet when you do, you realize their silence holds entire symphonies of thought. These are the people who write messages they never send, who rehearse conversations that never happen, who sit quietly at gatherings not because they're bored, but because they are absorbing everything. The tension, the joy, the subtle currents of emotion that others miss. They often find peace in solitude. Long walks, late-night journaling, moments spent in stillness. Because in silence they return to themselves. They don't have to explain or translate. They can just be. And though the world may never understand the comfort they find there, their quiet is not a defect. It's a design. It's how they survive in a world that too often mistakes volume for truth. They are not broken for preferring silence. They are simply fluent in a different language, one that speaks softly yet says everything that matters. Silence doesn't appear out of nowhere. It is learned, slowly, unconsciously, through moments when speaking felt dangerous. For many quiet souls, the roots of silence reach back to childhood. Not always to loud trauma, but to small, consistent lessons in emotional safety. Perhaps they grew up in homes where emotions were met with dismissal. Don't make a scene. You're too sensitive. Be quiet. Or in families where love existed, but space for expression did not. where every word had to be measured, where being understood was a luxury, not a right. Over time, a child learns. They learn that silence keeps the peace, that staying quiet prevents rejection, that to be loved one must not be too much, so they start holding things in. The hurt, the curiosity, the anger, the joy. Not because they don't feel them, but because they've seen what happens when they do. When they cried, someone rolled their eyes. When they tried to explain, someone spoke louder. When they finally shouted, someone called them dramatic, so they stopped. They stopped explaining, stopped defending, stopped offering the parts of themselves that kept being misunderstood. And in that stillness, they began to build a new home, inside their own mind. A place where no one could interrupt, where every emotion could exist freely, safely, where silence became the only space where they were not told who to be. Psychologists call this adaptive self-silencing, a coping mechanism formed in early life to avoid emotional injury. To the outside world, the child seems easygoing, compliant, well-behaved. But inside, a quiet tension grows. The feeling of having too much to say, with nowhere safe to say it. Silence becomes not just a habit, but an identity. It shapes how they think, how they connect, how they love. They become adults who overanalyze every word before they speak it, who write and delete messages dozens of times, who replay conversations wondering if they said too much or not enough. The origins of silence are rarely dramatic. They are subtle, like background static that never fades. A father who never listened. A mother who dismissed tears as weakness. A classroom where being quiet was praised more than being curious. A friend who betrayed a secret. It doesn't take much for a sensitive mind to learn that silence is safer. And once learned, it's rarely forgotten. In adolescence, this silence deepens. As others learn to perform for approval, the quiet ones withdraw further. They become observers, watching, analyzing, storing details others overlook. Their inner world grows vast and vivid, but also private. They trust their imagination more than their voice, and when they do try to speak, they often feel out of sync. Their thoughts move too slowly for conversation, too deeply for casual talk, so they return again to where it feels right, inward. By adulthood, silence has fused with identity. It's no longer just what they do, and it's who they are. It feels like home, but this home was built on survival, on a quiet promise made long ago. It's better to say nothing than to be heard again. That promise protected them once, but now it also keeps them distant from others and sometimes from themselves. And yet in their silence there is grace. Because even though it was born from pain, it also reveals strength, the ability to endure, to think deeply, to feel without collapsing. It's a reminder that silence was not chosen out of weakness but wisdom, a wisdom formed too early perhaps, but one that carried them safely into adulthood. Behind every quiet adult is a child who learned that peace comes from saying less. And though that child may have outgrown their room, their silence still echoes, soft, protective, and familiar, like a language they never stop speaking. Silence feels emotional, but beneath it lies a complex web of biology. The quiet person's mind is not empty, it's finely tuned. Their thoughts spiral, their senses absorb. Their brain works in layers most people never notice. To understand the psychology of silence, we must look at the machinery behind it, the nervous system, the emotional circuits, and the way the brain learns to protect itself. For those who feel safer in quiet, the brain is often wired for hyper-awareness. It scans constantly for tone, expression, or subtle threat, not because danger is present, but because once danger lived close. Early experiences of emotional unpredictability, criticism, volatility, neglect, can train the amygdala, the brain's emotional alarm system, to stay alert, always ready, always watching. When that system fires too often, silence becomes soothing, because in silence there are fewer signals to interpret. No raised voices, no hidden meanings, no confusion to decode. Silence is control, a way of calming an overstimulated nervous system. Neuroscientists call this a form of emotional regulation through withdrawal. When the world feels too loud, the brain learns to retreat inward to maintain balance. And while others may see withdrawal as avoidance, it is, at its core, self-preservation. But this vigilance has a side effect. The quiet mind can rarely rest. Its constant scanning makes social interactions exhausting. Every conversation becomes a maze of meaning. Every word dissected. Every gesture analyzed. It's not that the quiet person dislikes people. they just feel people too much. The prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain responsible for reflection and self-monitoring, works overtime. It evaluates, predicts, and moderates every possible outcome. Before a sentence is spoken, 1,000 versions are tested mentally. Before an emotion is shown, it's filtered through layers of restraint. That's why silence feels safer. Speaking is unpredictable. Silence is precise. Speaking invites judgment. Silence ensures control. But what begins as self-protection can become self-confinement, because the same brain that guards against pain also guards against connection. The mind that reads danger in tone can also read rejection in kindness. This is how the body remembers even when the person forgets. The muscles tense when attention is drawn. The pulse quickens when asked to share. The throat tightens before words form. It's not hesitation. It's the nervous system whispering, "Stay safe." And so, silence is not simply a choice. It's a physiological response, a reflex learned through repetition. Psychologists studying introversion and emotional sensitivity often find higher activity in the insula, the region of the brain linked to internal awareness. This means quiet people feel more and not less. They sense emotional shifts in themselves and others with remarkable precision. That awareness is a gift, but also a burden. Because when you notice everything, it's hard not to be overwhelmed. That's why many quiet souls seek spaces of sensory simplicity, the hum of rain, the stillness of night, the emptiness of a quiet room. Their brains crave environments that don't demand decoding. In those moments, their nervous systems finally exhale. Silence gives the brain permission to rest. It lowers cortisol. It slows the heartbeat. It lets the overactive mind finally stop bracing for what's next. But if the mind stays there too long, isolation begins to feel like peace. And connection, with its unpredictability and noise, starts to feel like danger. This is the paradox of the quiet brain. What once served as protection becomes the very thing that keeps it lonely. Yet within this pattern lies something profound, a biological compassion. Because every time the quiet person retreats, their body is simply trying to protect them from harm. Their silence isn't defiance, it's defense. A small wordless prayer for calm in a world that once felt unsafe. Silence feels light on the surface, calm, composed, effortless. But beneath that stillness lives an invisible heaviness, the kind that builds slowly, like air thickening in a closed room. For people who retreat into silence, the true weight they carry isn't in what they say, it's in what they never could. There are words that live inside them like fossils, once alive, now buried under years of restraint. Things they wanted to confess, to defend, to shout, but never did. Because experience taught them that not every truth is welcome, not every feeling is safe. So they hold it all, quietly, carefully, until silence becomes not just a habit but a form of containment. They speak fluently in thought, not in sound. Entire stories unfold in their minds, dialogues replayed, endings rewritten. But when they try to share those thoughts, language feels too blunt, too small, so they keep it in. And slowly, silence begins to ache. There is a loneliness that comes not from being alone, but from being unexpressed, from having so much within you, kindness, insight, tenderness, and no place for it to land. It's like living in a glass room surrounded by others but never quite reaching them. The world often celebrates calm people for their composure. They are seen as grounded, mature, emotionally balanced. But what few realize is how much energy it takes to appear that way. How often they swallow discomfort, disguise anger, or soften their sadness so others don't feel uneasy. They hold back, not because they don't want to connect, but because they fear burdening others. Because deep down they learned that their emotions take up too much space. So they become experts in quiet sacrifice. They listen to others' pain, but rarely share their own. They console, advise, absorb, and then when the room empties, they exhale into silence. It's not self-pity, it's preservation. A quiet endurance that looks peaceful but feels heavy. In psychology, this pattern is sometimes called emotional suppression, when feelings are consciously restrained to maintain harmony. But suppression doesn't erase emotion. It only drives it deeper. Over time, it seeps into the body. Tension in the jaw, fatigue in the chest, tightness in the stomach. The voice may stay silent, but the body remembers everything that was never said. For many, this becomes a cycle. The more they hold in, the harder it becomes to speak. And the harder it is to speak, the more misunderstood they feel, until silence becomes both the problem and the solution. Sometimes they long to be known, deeply, wordlessly known. To have someone sit with them long enough to hear what isn't being said, because they don't need fixing, they need translating. Their silence isn't rejection, it's a request for gentleness, a hope that someone might see the truth between their pauses. And when that rarely happens, the longing turns inward. They start finding comfort in their own company, not because they've stopped caring about people, but because they've accepted that few truly listen without interruption. Still, the unspoken builds up. It hums beneath the surface, and an unrelieved tension and unfinished thought. And though they may never say it out loud, a quiet wish remains. That one day, someone will notice the words behind their eyes, because silence is not the absence of communication. It's a language made of restraint, of trust withheld, of meanings only felt. And for those who live inside it, every unspoken word has a heartbeat, echoing softly, endlessly, waiting for the world to grow quiet enough to finally hear. At first, silence is comfort. It is the soft place one returns to after a long day of pretending to be fine. It soothes, protects, restores. But with time, the same silence that once felt like safety begins to feel like distance. What started as a shield turns slowly into a wall, invisible, quiet, yet impossible to climb. The people who feel safest in their own silence rarely notice this shift when it begins. It happens gradually, through missed calls, unanswered messages, small hesitations to join conversations. They tell themselves they're just tired or busy or not in the mood. But beneath those excuses, something deeper moves. A quiet fear that the outside world no longer feels safe enough to return to. Silence starts to rewrite the mind's definition of peace. Peace becomes absence, and of people, of conflict, of demand. And so even gentle connection begins to feel intrusive. Even love starts to sound loud. This is how silence transforms from a space of calm into a cage of control. It stops being about rest and starts being about avoidance. Not because the person no longer desires connection, but because they no longer trust it. They begin to tell themselves that solitude is simpler, that no one really listens anyway, that relationships always end in exhaustion. These beliefs, once survival strategies, start hardening into truths, and soon, silence no longer serves them. It governs them. Psychologists describe this pattern as avoidant coping, a way of managing emotional vulnerability by staying detached. It offers short-term relief but long-term loneliness, because the human brain, no matter how quiet, still needs resonance, still needs the feeling of being seen. The wall of silence is rarely built out of arrogance or apathy. It's built from accumulated disappointment. Each brick is a moment of being misunderstood. Each layer is a time they spoke and felt unseen. Over the years, the wall becomes architecture, a structure of self-preservation that keeps pain out but also keeps love from getting in. Inside this wall, life grows smaller. Conversations shrink to surface exchanges. Laughter feels distant, like a language once known but forgotten. Even joy becomes muted, something observed, not lived, and yet they tell themselves it's fine. That this is peace, that the quiet room and the closed door are enough. But late at night, the stillness hums with a different tone, one that sounds less like serenity and more like longing. They miss connection, but cannot bear the risk it brings. They crave to be understood, but cannot find the words. They ache to be known, but fear being seen. This is the quiet paradox of isolation. The wall protects them from hurt, and in doing so, also protects them from healing. Over time, they may forget what emotional safety even feels like. Because when you live too long in silence, even kindness feels foreign. A gentle question might feel like intrusion. A sincere compliment might trigger suspicion. The nervous system, so accustomed to calm through solitude, begins to interpret connection as threat. That's why breaking this wall requires more than willpower. It requires trust. And trust, for those who've been hurt by misunderstanding, is not built overnight. It's built slowly, through the rare experience of being seen without judgment. Until then, silence remains both home and prison, a place that feels safe because it's predictable. But even within that prison, something quietly hopes. Because beneath every wall of silence, there is still a heart that remembers warmth, still a longing that has not died, only gone quiet. And sometimes that faint longing, that soft ache for connection, is the first small crack in the wall. When silence has been your language for years, speaking again feels strange, even frightening. The words come slowly, uncertainly, like a muscle that hasn't been used in a long time. The return to voice is never sudden. It doesn't happen through confrontation or force. It begins quietly, often in places where the person feels unseen yet safe. Perhaps it's through writing, a journal that listens without interrupting, or through art, where emotions can move freely without explanation. Sometimes it begins in the presence of someone whose gentleness feels like permission. There is no grand awakening, only small, tender moments where the wall begins to soften. It might happen in the way someone listens, not waiting to reply, not trying to fix. Or in how a friend remembers something small, showing that they've truly paid attention. These moments reteach the silent mind what safety feels like. They remind it that not every sound leads to conflict. Not every truth leads to rejection. Slowly, the nervous system begins to trust again. The shoulders drop. The jaw loosens. The body no longer braces for misunderstanding. This is the quiet science of healing. Safety is not built through words. It's built through presence. And for those who've lived in silence, presence is everything. Psychologists describe this as re-regulation, when the body begins to associate connection with calm instead of danger. It's not about speaking more. It's about feeling safe enough to speak at all. In this stage, expression takes new shapes. Some rediscover their voice through art, poetry, or gentle conversation. Others through tears that finally fall after years of composure. The act of expressing, even in whispers, becomes sacred. It's a reunion between the self that hid and the self that still wants to be known. And with every word spoken, a piece of the past loses its power. Because silence held everything: fear, pain, misunderstanding. But expression lets it breathe. They begin to realize that voice doesn't mean noise. It doesn't mean shouting or defending or explaining. It means allowing truth to exist outside the body. It means giving shape to what has always lived inside. For many, this process feels fragile. They might speak one day and retreat the next. Healing isn't linear, it's rhythmic, like the ocean, moving forward and pulling back. Each wave teaches trust. In time, silence itself changes. It stops being a hiding place and becomes a companion again, something chosen, not imposed. Now, when they retreat into quiet, it's not to escape, it's to rest, because the difference between isolation and solitude lies in choice. And finally, they are beginning to choose. There's beauty in this return, because when a quiet person finds their voice, it's never loud. It's honest. It doesn't seek attention. It seeks connection, and that authenticity carries a power that noise never could. Sometimes their voice appears in unexpected places, a soft confession shared late at night, a poem written in the Notes app, a text that says, "I miss you." These may seem small, but for someone who has lived behind silence, they are acts of bravery. The return to voice isn't about becoming someone new. It's about remembering who they were before the world told them to be quiet. The child who once wanted to speak freely, the mind that once trusted its own truth, the heart that once believed it was safe to be seen. And as they rediscover that voice, are trembling, imperfect, but real, something inside exhales for the first time in years. Because after all the years of stillness, the quiet soul finally understands their voice was never lost. It was only waiting for the world to become gentle enough to hear it. The story of a quiet soul is not a tragedy. It's a quiet masterpiece, and one painted in shades of restraint, sensitivity, and depth. The world often mistakes silence for emptiness. But silence, in truth, is full of meaning, full of observation, full of unspoken love that moves without needing sound. Quiet souls carry a kind of grace that cannot be learned. It's cultivated through years of watching, feeling, and understanding. They may not speak often, but when they do, their words are thoughtful, deliberate, shaped by empathy rather than impulse. Their calm presence soothes the space around them. Because they've known the cost of noise, they choose gentleness instead. And though they may never seek recognition, their stillness changes the room they're in. There's a peace that follows them, a softness that others can feel but rarely name. This is the quiet paradox. The same people who feel unseen often end up being the most grounding presence in others' lives. They listen, they hold space, they understand. They make others feel safe, even while still learning to feel safe themselves. Their silence is not absence. It's consideration. It's compassion translated into stillness. They do not rush to respond because they value what is said. They pause, they feel, they think. And when they finally speak, it comes not from ego but from understanding. Psychologists sometimes describe this as reflective empathy, the ability to process emotion internally before offering it outwardly. It's why quiet people often make the best confidants, creators, and healers. They sense what's beneath words, tone, energy, truth. But this grace was not born easily. It came from endurance, from learning how to hold emotion without breaking, from surviving misunderstanding yet choosing gentleness anyway, from knowing how heavy words can be and deciding to use them carefully. The quiet soul understands something most people overlook. That connection does not always require conversation. That love can be shown through presence, not performance. That understanding can exist in silence, between glances, between breaths. Their way of being invites stillness in others. It reminds the world that not everything valuable has to be loud to be real. That silence, too, can be an act of communication, one that speaks of trust, awareness, and peace. And when they finally accept their quiet nature, it no longer feels like isolation. It feels like truth, like a returning. Because what once felt like a burden, the need for solitude, the careful speech, the overthinking, becomes a form of wisdom. They learn that their silence has meaning. That reflection is strength. That listening deeply is a form of love. In that acceptance, their silence transforms from armor into art. No longer a wall, but a window. Others begin to see through it, not into emptiness, but into calm. They become mirrors, gently reflecting back the emotions others cannot name. Not fixing, not judging, simply witnessing. And in that witnessing, others begin to heal too. The grace of quiet souls is that they do not demand to be understood. They simply are. Their authenticity invites others to slow down, to listen differently, to feel more deeply. Because in a world addicted to noise, stillness is revolutionary. And those who can remain calm amid the chaos are the quiet teachers of this age. Their silence holds lessons, that peace is not the absence of sound, but the presence of understanding. That depth does not need decoration, that sometimes the most profound truths are spoken in whispers. So if you ever meet a quiet soul, someone who listens more than they speak, who pauses before they answer, know that you are standing before someone who has made peace with themselves, someone who carries the wisdom of stillness. Their silence is not something to break, it is something to honor. Because within it lives everything the world is too loud to hear. Silence is often misunderstood. It is seen as a gap, an absence to be filled, a pause to be broken. But for some, silence is the truest form of presence. It is where the noise of expectation fades, and what remains is the simple truth of being. Those who find safety in their own quiet are not escaping the world. They are listening to it more closely than most. They are tuned to subtleties, the trembling behind a smile, the ache hidden in laughter, the small ways people ask for love without words. Their silence holds empathy, not emptiness. Depth, not distance. And while the world may rush past them, their stillness remains calm, a kind of wisdom disguised as calm. Because silence, when chosen with awareness, is not loneliness. It is communion, with thought, with truth, with the deeper rhythms of life itself. So when you meet a quiet soul, don't try to draw them out. Sit beside their stillness. Listen to the space between words. You might just hear the sound of peace,